Okay, so welcome to the MCO Investment Committee. I'm Councillor Nigat Khan and I'm the Portfolio Holder Lead for Investment at MCO. Just do some housekeeping. The meeting is being live streamed. Your attendance is accepting. You may appear on it. Can I ask those speaking to switch their microphones on when speaking and turn off when you've spoken? Thank you. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Yates and Councillor Moseby is here as a substitute. Any other apologies? No. Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. I'd like to declare an interest in item 8 on the investment fund pipeline. Any other councillors who's got items on item 8? Do we have to declare them as constituent members?
I think you're probably best to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, I believe I'm obliged to declare as well.
Councillor Rooney, Councillor Woodings.
Mine would be the same declaration as yourself, Councillor Khan, that Nottingham City Council benefits from the decisions made under Paper 8.
Likewise for Derby City.
Okay. Derby City and Nottingham City Council. Yep.
Likewise for Derbyshire County Council for me, John Lawson.
Okay. Thank you.
I think there's also an item under item 10 as well.
Yeah, I think item 10 goes into more detail, but if you find as we're going along that you need to declare, just raise your hands, that's fine. So, is everyone happy to approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of October to be approved as the correct record? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is public participation. Members of the public are eligible to attend the meetings of the investment committee and may submit questions. One question has been received from a member of the public, but as the member of the public is not in attendance, the question will receive a written response which will be published on the MCO website following the meeting. Okay. If we then move on to item 5, Transport Investment Programme, I invite Alex, Head of Transport Investment, to introduce the report which advises the Investment Committee on the submission of MCO's board for approval of a range of local transport allocations to take effect from the beginning of 26-27 financial year. Over to you, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Khan. The paper today is to introduce the forthcoming paper that's going to the March the 9th MCA board, looking at making allocations, first phase of allocations from the Transport Investment Programme. What we'll cover today is introducing that paper to go to the March the 9th board, the recommendations that are being submitted to board for approval, the processes and principles on which this proposal has been developed, and then the next steps for developing the next phase of the investment programme. The process for this has been overseen by Transport and Digital Connectivity Committee across the last 6 months or so, where we've had a series of meetings looking at initially developing the process, then developing the principles, and then leading into a series of specific decisions. Sorry, not decisions by committee, decisions to be presented to MCA board. The table there summarises the sort of headline values of what's being asked for at MCA board. So the table in the top left demonstrates the commitment to asset resilience, the continuation of maintenance programmes. We have proposed an allocation for the year across the 4 authorities totalling £121 million. That is the equivalent of the 25-26 programme plus a 5% inflation element. We're also proposing that the same principle is adopted for the following 2 years, so that we look at the end of each financial year, review the inflation element, and then increase the value accordingly. The reason behind looking at a 3-year programme is to enable the authorities to resource and plan ahead more strategically. For a number of years, authorities have been limited to annual programmes, where the ability to plan ahead has been quite limited by the availability of funding and by the deadlines for getting funding spent by March 31st. So what we're looking to do is create the opportunity for a longer term planning process for the asset resilience, which enables a shift to more preventative maintenance and not quite so much focus on the reactive responsive maintenance. The Distribution of those allocations is based on the Department for Transport formula that was in existence prior to the maintenance funding being subsumed into the single central pot. So it continues the proportions that would have been applied by DFT if they were still allocating the funding directly. The second table in the top right, it's a similar principle. This is for what we're calling the communities and neighbourhoods allocation. Historically, that was called your integrated transport block allocation, but we've renamed it because that title doesn't really tell you much about what the funding does. This is the programme of discretionary funding led by each of the constituent authorities, looking at those smaller scale, higher volume interventions that have the immediate impact on people's day-to-day journeys. So it's things like drop crossings, improving access to local facilities. It's smaller scale safety schemes, it's junction improvements. It's not the large scale multi-year strategic investments, it's those operational day-to-day things. The allocation for that, again, is based on a 3-year profile. So the last year's allocation plus a 5% inflation again, and then repeating that process for the next years. And again, that's to enable longer term planning for authorities to look at more comprehensive programmes, open up a bit more into the whole street approach where you're not just looking at individual interventions, but you can look at packages of interventions in the same area. As with the highways maintenance, the distribution of that is based on the Department for Transport formula. It's a slightly different formula for that programme, but it still takes into account specific criteria relevant to each individual authority. The final table at the bottom is a list of it's a summary, sorry, not the list, of individual schemes. These are schemes that are currently underway or in development to a degree, where through discussion with the sponsoring authorities, we've identified that any further delay in making an allocation to them would have disproportionately negative impacts. In the paper going to MCA board, there is a link to a full table that lists each of the schemes and each of the justifications for this early decision. Just to give a couple of examples for representation, there are 2 schemes that have secured external funding, one from the Department for Transport's Major Route Network Programme, one from MHCLG's Levelling Up Fund. In order to secure that funding and get access to it there, we also need to provide our match funding, and so the decision for those schemes is being made now to secure that match and ensure that we have the ability to draw down that external funding. Some of the other schemes in there are schemes that would need to be delivered during the summer period, so interventions in and around schools that need to be done while the schools are shut. So again, there's individual reasons for each of those. The total value of those schemes is the 22.7 million for next year, then 16 the year after, and 28 the year after that. All in all, that brings us to a list of recommended allocations for the next 3-year period, which totals £470 million. As I mentioned, this has been governed by Transport and Digital Connectivity Committee and is the output of a 6-month process to discuss and develop the proposals. Some of the principles on which those decisions have been founded, initially there was 75 million of maintenance funding that was put into the Transport for City Regions central allocation by DFT. So our initial position was that we would at least maintain that level of funding. We subsequently agreed that actually what we wanted to do was ensure that no authority had a year-on-year reduction, and so we used this year's total maintenance allocation. In 25-26, we had boosted the DFT allocation by a further £38 million, which is what sort of today's figures. We made the same commitment to the local community and neighbourhood funding, that essentially we would at least match what was going into the pot from DFT. We also made a commitment to provide at least £21.5 million capital funding for public transport and integrated public transport investments. That's based again on a sum of funding that DFT would have given us separately in a distinct pot, but that they've subsumed into the Transport for City Regions allocation. There are no specific requests on that funding going to MCA board. We have a number of schemes that have come forward. We have a long list of proposals that would fall into that category, but there is a subsequent phase of programme development where we're going to look at deciding which of those would fit within that 21.5 million, but also whether or not we would want to support over and above that amount. The funding profile that we have from DFT, so the total pot is £2 billion over a 6-year period, but it's not equally distributed across those 6 years. In particular, the capital allocation increases significantly as we go across the period of the programme. So it's £184 million in year 1. By year 6, it's £440 million. So there's a huge spike in the available capital funding. What we don't currently have is a well-developed, healthy pipeline of strategic investments that could feed into that profile. So what we'd agreed through Transport Committee was that we would spend the early years using the revenue funding to develop that pipeline, to look at what the options are for those more strategic transformational investments that we can then deliver using the larger capital funding that's available in the back half of the 6-year programme. That £470 million figure still leaves around about £200 million in those first 3 years that we haven't yet allocated. That's predominantly capital funding, but there is some revenue funding within that mix. We invited submissions from the constituent authorities and on their behalf through the, excuse me, the districts and boroughs. We've had a significant number of submissions made, just over 80 submissions received across the course of a week towards the end of November. That's really positive in terms of the ambition that we've got and the range of things that are in development and in consideration in the region, but needed a more prolonged, a more measured approach to deciding how we best allocate that funding, because the list of schemes comes to 3 times the available funding that we've got left over. So we are working on that process at the moment, again working through Transport Committee and through the heads of service within the constituent authorities. We are going through a process to prioritise and present a number of options to Transport Committee for how we could best allocate that remaining funding over the first 3 years. We've deliberately just looked at the first 3 years because we don't really know what the situation is going to be in the back half of those 3 years, and because we do need to allow time for that pipeline to develop to enable us to be in a position to make decisions on what the most appropriate strategic investments are. We are developing our Mayor's Transport Plan at the moment. We are in a slightly odd scenario in that an ideal world, the transport plan would be developed, adopted, and then the investment programme would deliver against that. With the scale of funding that we've got available to us and the immediacy of it, but also the immediacy of some of the problems that we're needing to address on the network, we can't wait for the Mayor's Transport Plan to be adopted. So that's why these two things are running concurrently. But that's another reason why we need to make sure we do still have some flexibility and some ability to manoeuvre as we get later on into the programme. If we were to try and allocate all 6 years of now, we could potentially miss out on things that are maybe more important opportunities a bit further down the line. The paper that's going to MCA board is asking for those allocations that have that immediate need or those ongoing processes so that we can have those in place and be able to deliver from the start of the financial year. Because although it's a 6-year programme we've got, we don't want to lose delivery time while we wait for meeting cycles. So that's why those have gone on this particular schedule. I've mentioned the remaining allocations, so I don't think I'll go through this slide any further than that. It's just to reiterate that there is another process to look at what is still on the table. But there have been no schemes that have been turned down at this point. What we're focused on are the decisions that we need to make now, and then we'll continue with that decision-making process. The intention is to take that to the April the 2nd Transport Committee to ask them to then review the options in front of them.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions? Councillor Woodings?
Yes, thank you. Very happy to approve this paper coming forward, and it's good to see, as far as highways asset maintenance is concerned, that you've been able to top that pot up a bit. I'm really pleased as well that Nottingham has managed to secure funding towards our successful Streets for People funding, which has led to the resurfacing of 254 roads since May 2023, and more than 100 pavements as well. And I'm very pleased that we have that additional top up. As far as the maintenance of that programme is concerned, it's very successful, and it encourages people to walk and cycle around the city as well. In relation to the road safety grant, it's very interesting to see the government's road safety strategy coming out, and I look forward to discussing that at the next Transport Committee. But we do have a huge amount of interest in school safety and safety outside schools at drop off and pick up time from members of the public. So that is one area that we will certainly be looking to invest that money wisely. And finally, a bit of a plug for the new Ride app, which I think has had more than 6,000 downloads now, and beat Google Maps by 8 minutes a couple of weeks ago in the journey from Derby to Nottingham. It's every person who's used it, who I've spoken to, says it's remarkably successful. Anecdotally, I'm told the passengers are using the local link, which is our subsidised bus service, has actually increased based on the fact that people can tell the bus is coming. So I really do hope that one of the proposals coming forward is the extension of the ride app across the geography of the EMCA region, because of the fact that it could actually make bus routes more viable, because it gives passengers the confidence that the bus is definitely coming. So with that, just as I say, we are happy to approve the proposals coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wooding. Councillor John Clark.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just a question on these are vast sums of money that we're handing out and we're doing. Is there any thought towards the future maintenance? Do we look at the contracts, or do we just say, I need 50 million to do this? Do we ever look at the back of it? What happens in 5 years' time? Because in the city, which I live in Carlton, we've got a superb bus service. We've got electric buses, which will be shot at in a few. It won't be long. They're being bounced along the roads now, and I just wonder whether they've got any liability in there, the people, the contractors, whoever. Because I've got a new road where I live. It's a new road taken out to a depth of a foot, and then put in. Really made a good job of it. That's only about 5 years ago, and it's now showing real signs of cracking up. One is the heavy vehicles, there's no doubt, with the batteries on the buses and battery cars, etc. But do we ever look further so as we can get a little pot there that can start to look at it? Because we are, and if you go to a public meeting now, it's either dog mess or it's either potholes, but it's the other way around now, it's potholes. But it's looking at what we can have a look, see if we can bring some pressure to, whether we take some money out and put it in, I say, in another pot that then can be used in the future, because there's a great concern out there with the public. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Neil Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. A couple of things. Firstly, the communities and neighbourhoods allocations, section 3.6, and for Nottinghamshire is 4.14 million. I'm just interested in the concept of those funding allocations. Are they separate potential projects, or are they complementary to, do they contribute towards projects which the county council may be drawing up, or are these for completely separate projects? And then secondly, you talked for the capital projects, you talked about the 80 odd applications that have already come in. Rushcliffe Borough Council was pleased to host the Mayor and Chief Exec a month or so ago in Bingham in drawing up and looking at proposals for a large infrastructure improvement project there. How will that funding actually operate? Is there a sort of separate annual funding that allocations that are requested or invited allocations? Because of course we haven't got a business case as yet drawn up for that. That's still work in progress. So what happens in the next rounds, if you like, because I doubt that we'll have a business case formulated by April.
Alex, did you want to come back on them 3 questions?
Yeah, sure. So, Councillor Williams initially, in terms of the road safety strategy, yeah, we're all very interested with that. It was released. It had been promised for quite a while, but it's something that's particularly important to the team who are managing the mayoral transport plan. I think the point that you made around the school safety interventions and those programmes of activity in and around the school pick-up and drop-off time, we do have a very strong history within the region of having delivered those. There have been a number of school-based programmes that have been delivered over a number of years now. And those interventions that have been put forward, or within that list of interventions that have been put forward for the immediate decision, include some packages of continuation of those school streets programmes. So that's so that we can deliver the physical interventions during the summer months, but then that feeds into complementary activities that were delivered while the schools are open. And your other question was around the continuation of the ride app. That is one of the proposals that has come forward with a comprehensive range of options for how that could be developed over the next 5 years. Councillor Clark, your question around sort of the maintenance allocations and the sort of the contracts to look at how we protect those interventions over the next few years. There aren't any specific contracts that I can point to and say, right, this is how we're going to manage that. But what we have committed to doing with this increased level of allocation is commissioning an independent review so we can look at how do we make sure that we are achieving the best value in terms of the cost, but also the types of materials, the quality of delivery, the longevity of those interventions across the region, not as a view to point at where the failures are, but to just find ways that we can improve that we can make sure that as the improved infrastructure goes in, it does survive for longer. I think you made a very good point around the EV buses and the weight of those. There is a level of pressure put onto that network that wasn't there historically that needs to be recognised. Well, one of the other benefits of allowing this longer term allocation to be committed is that shift to more preventative work. So we can be looking at ways in which we can protect that network and prevent the deterioration, rather than at the moment when it's a little bit more responsive and we're having to deal with the potholes that will come. There will always be potholes. There's not going to be a situation where the winter weather doesn't create that to happen, but there is a strong intention to manage this funding or to use this funding as a way of shifting to much more preventative and dealing with those kind of scenarios you've described. And then Councillor Clark, the communities and neighbourhoods allocations, it's a discretionary allocation. It's essentially a programme level award that goes to each of the constituent authorities. Historically, some of it will have been used to support other interventions, so it will have been used as match funding for some of the larger scale interventions you might be doing. It's also been used to help provide some seed funding for those schemes, but at the same time it's also used for completely bespoke independent things. It's important that these smaller scale things are done, because while each of them individually isn't going to change the world, the value of having the network looked after at that day-to-day operational level is critical, and without that, any strategic investments you make become undermined because you've not got the healthy network around them. You asked about Rushcliffe and some of the larger intervention development plans you've got. The revenue funding that we have in place across that 6-year period is where we'll be looking for authorities to develop those proposals. So it's not a concern or in any way unique that you wouldn't have a business case ready for the start of April. We're looking for that revenue funding to be made available to support that business case development. The idea being that over the course of the next 2 to 3 years, we're able to establish those options, and then those larger scale interventions can start to be delivered. We do have the single assurance framework within MCA, which all of our investments are overseen by, and there are different processes that have to be aligned to. So for a development only allocation, the need to have the business case in place before the funding is received is very different compared to if you were actually building the thing.
Chairman, if I may, I'm not sure if perhaps I haven't explained myself very well. It wasn't about revenue funding for drawing up the business case. It was about the actual capital allocations. And the capital schemes that you've already highlighted. So it's about making sure that there are still ongoing funding allocations available in the future, because we won't have the business case ready for the capital scheme by April.
Sorry, I understand. I had misunderstood your original question. The £200 million that we've got left over the next 2 to 3 years, we don't necessarily have to allocate all that now. We may still want to leave some room for manoeuvre. We will also need to review that programme on an ongoing basis, because although we will have strong intentions for capital schemes, some of them, when they go through the development process, will not come to fruition, and the business case will define that actually maybe it shouldn't go ahead, or the scale needs to change. So we're not shutting the door on new applications at any point. There is always an opportunity to put something forward. The last 3 years of the programme, we're not talking about allocating any of that at the moment. So there's in the region of £1.4 billion there, which is still available from the period 29 to 32. And as I said, there will be a continual review process between now and then to make sure that new emerging ideas or new emerging needs, anything that develops that needs to be addressed, can be considered and accommodated. So there's no point where we would say, sorry, the deadline is passed, there's no opportunity to come forward with new ideas.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Matthews?
Yeah, as MCA, because we've got this, and it's our first foray into potholes as as councillors, and it just seems to be a bun fight this time of the year, patching and moving, which doesn't seem to work. You know, this, I don't know, all I can describe it as, well, its name's Viafix, that we're running around all over Nottinghamshire filling these holes in that don't work. Has EMCA got a committee that's going out into colder countries and looking at how they do it properly? And, you know, do we have I'm in the food industry, you know, we call it new product development. Because it seems to me, you know, after 10 months, we're just doing the same things every year and every year. And we all know we haven't got enough money for all our roads. That's, you know, I know the mayor was on Friday saying, I've given you the money, get on with it. Well, we all need another £100 million, don't we? I'm not being disrespectful to the mayor anyway when I say that. But we've got to think out the box on this. That's the first thing. The second thing is safety outside schools. Now, we've got the A6006 blocked at the moment through Network Rail New Bridge. And I go twice a week in my area, Sutton Bonington and Normanton on Salt. And for 25 minutes every morning and afternoon, it's chaos with parents taking and bringing the children to school. I don't know how we can stop that. I don't think there's a solution to that. You know, honestly, you know, I must have spoken, I counted one day, only 42 people took the children by foot to school. The rest they were parking outside drives. And, you know, we can send the cameraman from the police, but there's perhaps 2 camera vans in Nottinghamshire. I don't know how we can cure that. Perhaps EMCA's got a magic wand. But going back to the first one, we really need to look outside the box of these foreign countries. Because you hear that Norway, they've got this special resin that they're doing, it, you know, minus 40. So we say a bit of rain comes down and poof.
Alex, I'll take a few more questions. Councillor Reaney?
Yeah, Alex, thanks for that briefing. It's very good, and we do welcome very much that we've got funding for 3 years. It helps us really plan. The directional note I've got is that we know that the funding is conditional on achieving certain objectives or gateways, which leads us on to the next thing, that we should be wary of making mistakes that the previous Department for Transport used to make, where assessments were based on data, perhaps based on city regions, and we are actually now controlling a larger region, 2 cities, various towns, more rural. So if we're going to set any measurements or KPIs, then, you know, we must take account of the kind of more rural nature. And what I'd like to ask you to do is pick up with my officer, Joe Batty, later to talk through any mistakes the DFT make. Let's not repeat them, and let's make sure the assessments that we're, you know, the targets we're basing them on are realistic for our area. Thank you.
Is there any other councillors? Yeah, Councillor Clark.
Just a quick point of information, Chairman, for Councillor Matthews. The County Council has got 3 camera cars which go to schools, etc. So if he wishes, I could give you the contact for him to request the camera cars go to that school in Sutton Bonington.
Okay, and then I'll just ask my question. So it's great news that we're getting 3 years funding, which is good news, but I do think we do need to look at the formula. I know that Department for Transport give the money to EMCA, but just to pass it on isn't probably the way we should be doing it. I think we need to look going forward, because if you think, you know, if I just think about the way the city spend the money, we don't necessarily just fix potholes, we do more around streets and stuff. But I do think that if you think about main routes in and out of the city, and even in the counties and stuff, the roads that are used more, we can't always allocate, because if we allocated just to do, you know, the main route into the city, all the money would go. How would you deal that with neighbourhoods? So I do think that the mayor should look at potentially allocating money to main routes, because if we're talking about more investment and people, more visitors come into the, you know, to come into the region, then one thing they'll know is if they come on different sorts of transport. But if they use the roads, they're really bad, and that's wherever you come from into East Midlands. I think we need to make sure there's pots available. I know at the moment it's on the discretions of the councils, but I do think the formula needs to be looked at to make sure that in an east, west, north, however people come into the region, that the roads are good.
Thank you. And so, Councillor Matthews, the point around sort of innovation around the approach to addressing potholes, that is another part of the commission that I referred to earlier. Now, as a condition of us allocating this extra funding over this prolonged period, we do need to make sure that we are improving where we can, the ways in which it's being used. And that's not intended to be a suggestion that it's been done poorly in the past. It's the fact that 3 years worth of funding and having that site in advance gives you an opportunity to do things differently that previously wouldn't have been possible. But certainly, how do we innovate and how do we change and improve some of the practices that would help shift or reduce that recurrence of potholes? You also mentioned sort of safety outside schools. I don't know the area on the A6006, so I can't suggest what the particular intervention might be there. But within the experience that we have, there is a range of the camera car enforcement that's been referred to, but also physical interventions that do prevent cars going in. Obviously, each location has its own specific needs and its own specific layout, but that's something that we would, with that particular area, if that's on the list of schools that's being looked at, then we would look at a bespoke solution for how we do deal with that. And what you've described there in terms of the volume of people bringing their children to school and getting the car as close to the gate as they can isn't unique and has been improved significantly in some of the areas that we've been able to address previously. Councillor Rini, the sort of KPIs and the conditional allocations. There is, as part of the Mayor's Transport Plan Development Programme, one of the next significant work packages we'll be looking at what those targets should be, what those KPIs would be. So rather than discuss them on a sort of scheme by scheme basis, we would look to set those at that strategic document level. Those will then inform us what kind of targets we need to be achieving across the investment programme, and then individual schemes will be assessed as part of the scheme development process to make sure that they are contributing to those. As the Mayor's Transport Plan is in development at the moment, we've not got that defined, quantified KPIs and targets at the moment, but we do have a number of emerging policies and goals that have been agreed through the development work that's been done. And the assessment process that we do with the schemes that come forward so far looks at making sure that all the schemes that we are supporting do align to those goals. They also contribute to the goals in the growth plan, in the Department for Transport's funding conditions, and in the outcomes framework that's being developed and going to the March the 9th board. So we are ensuring that the schemes are aligned at a strategic level, and as we develop those quantified targets and KPIs, we'll then be able to assess the schemes to make sure they're also aligning with those. With regards to the contact with Joe and I have a very regular set of meetings where we get together, so I will talk to Joe about any advice and learnings we can take from previous. I noted Councillor Clark, but that was just to reference the ability to share the cars, wasn't it? The enforcement vehicles. And Councillor Khan, so your comment around the DFT's formula. At the last Transport Committee where we agreed to make these recommendations, it was also suggested that we needed to do an exercise to look at what that formula is, look at the criteria that DFT use. It's based around road length and numbers of structures, the number of lighting columns. It's very much based on the scale of assets that we've got. But to go through an exercise to look at that and see if there are alternative ways of applying that process. We agreed to use the formula at the moment because it is an existing formula. It's recognised, there is a justification behind it, but there is an action on Transport Committee to look at that and consider if there is a better way to adopt that funding approach.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Olsen.
Just a quick one from me. One of my frustrations with the roads seems to be the amount of times that the utility companies, I know everybody does, they dig them up. Poor repairs, to be fair. To say these people are supposed to be, the experts that are doing this nationally, the repairs are I just don't get the impression, I've asked the question at our county council, that these people are genuinely held to account. I don't get the feeling that there's SOPs that are measured, managed, repairs signed off, this failed with this. And when we go back, when there is an issue, the commercial organisations, they're dragging their feet, they're finding reasons not to go, and of course we're all as councillors taking all the pain for this. Could MK get something together where they've got some sort of real clout to hit these people over the head and start fines or whatever else to try and get these roads fixed quicker?
And Probably just to add on that, if they could plan their maintenance, I get there'll always be emergencies, but it's the worst thing is when you've just laid a road and they come a couple of months later to rip it apart again.
There are certain powers available to highway authorities. So they wouldn't be available to EMCA because we're not the highway authority. It would have to sit with Derby, Derbyshire and Nottingham, Nottinghamshire. Those powers do enable you to basically apply a licence scheme so that any utilities or anybody else needing to dig up the road has to apply for the licence. You've then obviously got that governance and structure around it. I don't know with the 4 authorities in our area which have or haven't applied for those powers because it was part of changing legislation last year. But there is a function there that does enable that to happen and to deal with exactly the kind of scenarios you've been describing there, whether it's poor quality or whether it's poorly timed utilities and other undertakers on the highway network.
Okay, so is the committee happy to note the details of the Transport Investment Programme recommended for EMCA's board approval by the Transport and Digital Connectivity Committee? Great, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to item 6, strategic investment next steps. So I'm going to invite Diane, the Director of Economic Growth and Innovation, to introduce the report that updates the committee on the next phases of EMCA's strategic investment approach. So Diane.
Thank you. Morning everybody. So this paper updates committee on the progress and next steps we're making, taking our investment approach from kind of the competitive call for projects towards the thematic commissioning approach that we've discussed with committee before. In October, Investment Committee agreed this approach because we felt it would reduce duplication of effort and support more place-based investments rather than competing within the EMCA area. So to inform this commission approach, we've had a series of place-based conversations since Christmas. So we've met as EMCA with each of the constituent authorities. That concluded mid-February, and we're going to use the outputs of those sessions to support and refine our approach in terms of the investment framework that we're going to bring forward. It will also deliver against the local growth plan and the inclusive growth framework, but we wanted to make sure it aligned with your local priorities as well. And I think those place-based conversations really helped us understand where your priorities are. So we plan to return to this committee with a draft investment framework by the June meeting at the latest and show you some iterations of that as we go. However, there are some specific decisions and inputs we would like to seek from committee today with respect to the Project Feasibility Fund, which is at 3.6 in your papers, and Local Growth Fund, which starts at 3.7. So the paper asks committee to agree the mobilisation of up to £1 million of project feasibility funding, and this is to accelerate the development of a pipeline of projects. The funding will be used to commission each constituent council to work up a set of potential projects up to business case, which then can be brought to EMCA to kind of secure funding going forward. We're asking that this first point of feasibility funding focus on deliverable projects that could come to fruition in the next 1 to 5 years. We're aware from our place-based conversations and through this committee that the capacity to work up business cases, as well as the ability to access revenue funding to bring in specialist inputs around getting to the right REBA stage or economic impact assessments to get to full business case has been a barrier. So we're hoping that this funding starts to mitigate some of that. We've also discussed this opportunity as part of the place-based conversations, and in each of those have now a priority set of projects that we'll be looking to kind of confirm the funding against to bring it forward. So we'd like your support on mobilising that. With respect to Local Growth Fund, committee are asked to note that an investment plan is required by government for the Local Growth Fund. We actually received a formal notification on the 6th of February with a pro forma and a set of outputs and outcomes and a request to have the investment plan back in by the 6th of March. So a quick turnaround here. So with that in mind, we wanted to propose an approach to Investment Committee today, which is that we will trial the thematic approach that we've been talking about during this committee, using the inclusive growth framework output comes as kind of broad thematic areas to look under. working with constituent authorities to kind of do a gap analysis around what our priorities are in the East Midlands Growth Plan, where we've currently got funding and where the gaps are. So as we've been having these conversations through the technical officers group, priorities like business support have come through, because the amount of business support going in at the moment has been minimal, and after the drop off of Shared Prosperity Fund, economic inactivity is another priority that's come through. Mobilising and bringing footfall back to high streets and local centres and city centres. These are all the things that have been feeding through in our conversations so far. So for those who aren't aware, the Local Growth Fund is about 107 million. It's 47 million of revenue, but it declines over the 3 years to be 0 in year 4. And the capital element of that ramps up from about 6 million to 27 million. So in terms of how we're looking at this at fund level, we need to make sure that we're looking at sustainability and we're not just creating a cliff edge in the next kind of 2 or 3 years, looking at different models and vehicles for development, as well as, I think you were saying on transport as well, making sure we spend the revenue well so that we can get the capital out the door in a timely way on the right projects. So if the feasibility fund works for the 1 million that we're trialling, is there a rationale to do that over the longer term? Just to bring to your attention Appendix 1 as well. So this funding has come from government with what's called a logic model, a theory of change attached to it. So it gives us some clear areas of focus where this funding needs to be spent. So it's business support, skills development and infrastructure investment are the 3 main areas. There may be some flexibility around some of that, particularly when we want to try and maximise social value out of this money, but we'll need to put in place outputs and a really robust argument for that. As well as the logic model, government have provided a set of outputs and outcomes that we can pick from and focus our activity towards as well. So they've been shared with the technical officers group. If you want to just look at 3.11, this sets out a set of principles that we're wanting to kind of undertake the development of the growth plan, the investment plan around. One of the things within there that I just wanted to draw to your attention is the level of where we deliver, and just acknowledge that although we might need to put in regional frameworks, that delivery should take place at the level that's most appropriate for the thing that we are funding. So, for example, if you're talking about economic inactivity, that's best done in localities with communities. We know that's the most effective way to commission that activity, rather than at a regional level through a regional procurement. Same goes for kind of high street and town development. It's your locality areas that know those places best. For things like business support, where we might be wanting to put a fund in place that businesses across EMCA can access, that may be better done at a regional level. So we'll take that approach as we go through. So there's quite a tight timeline to turn this around. So we're planning to put back into government an initial investment plan by the 6th of March as per their deadline. They have outlined a co-creation process after that. So we're suggesting that we don't identify all of our interventions and targets at that point, that we take a bit more time to do that, to get that right, and to work with constituent authorities to do that. This will need to then also be ratified by the EMCA board due to the scale of the investment. So it's on the June agenda. So we'll be working with government between now and then to meet their requirements of a deadline, but also make sure that the investment plan works for us, for our governance and the priorities that we need to go forward. I'll leave it there and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Diane. Councillor Woodings, Councillor Ross, and next.
Yes, thank you very much for that. And I agree, it's a very tight turnaround to get this in for the 6th of March. A really interesting interview on Radio 4's Today programme this morning, talking to, I think it was the head of the Commerce for Trade, about some of the encouraging signs that have come out on Friday about the UK economy, retail sales, 30-year low on gilts, and record levels of revenue coming in. And I appreciate that this sum of money is not going to replace the shared prosperity fund money that was coming in, But it was very interesting that, and I think one of the things I really hope that we actually concentrate on is business support, because we know that overall, before the Local Growth Fund was introduced, there was a reduced level of funding for business support, and there's a very sort of central hub approach taking place as far as that's concerned. I'm interested in how we'll be tying in with different partners on this, because obviously we have universities, for example, that where they could actually help businesses develop their digital skills, and their digital footprint, and how they operate. We know that there's an issue of the skills contract, because again, that's not as much as we used to get under Streets for People. It's being delivered in a different way. And so very much welcome the gap analysis as far as that's concerned, which I know Fliss Miller is actually undertaking that gap analysis at the minute, to see where that's happening, because hyperlocal can work for that, and employability across the region as well. And then I'm interested in how we're developing the economic, the pathways for people who are economically inactive, because obviously significant numbers of them, some of it is a feed over from COVID times as well, is to do with sort of mental health support as well for those individuals. And it was a bit concerning that the latest skills contract doesn't count volunteering, which is a great pathway into work for people who are economically inactive. That's not part of their outcomes on the new skills contract, which I thought was quite disappointing, because the people who are actually working on the ISPCP, or whatever the acronym is, actually say that volunteering is a really good route to get people who've been economically inactive, who have confidence issues and anxiety issues. Volunteering is a really great way to get those individuals into work. And certainly driving high streets and city centres, as you know, we've got our vision strategy for Nottingham coming forward, but we have some organisations like the Nottingham Growth Board, like the Nottingham Business Improvement District as well, who would be really interested in feeding into that, what we're actually putting forward as far as the Local Growth Fund monies are concerned as well. So it's really just to ask how we're kind of tying in with those different partners who could actually play a really good part as far as getting the best value possible out of the Local Growth Fund and making sure it really delivers on the ground. And I mean, obviously I'm very happy to approve the 2 principles within the paper as well, I should say. Thank you.
Councillor Martin Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to associate myself with Councillor Wooding's comments about returning to work and volunteering being an important aspect of that. And for people who've been out of the workforce for some time, it's really a case of small steps and trying to build confidence and an individually tailored solution really for each individual to help them make those steps back into work. So I'm sure that's been heard. Yes, very happy to support the paper. I think the principles in it are very welcomed. We've mentioned before the over a number of years the capacity within local authorities to bring forward projects has gone because of funding cuts over the years. So this feasibility funding is very welcome in order to be able to develop that capacity again. And also different local authorities have got very different levels of capacity, so I think this is important to create a level playing field and to make sure that all authorities in the East Midlands have got an opportunity to work up their projects and that we don't leave any areas behind. So that's very much to be welcomed. On business support, yes, I agree. It's been a bit of a postcode lottery in the past, so it'll be good to bring a more coherent and standardised expectation from business as to what support they can expect, but also good to hear that you're understanding the local links that there are, and the importance of working with local providers to understand what's going on in each area. So yes, very much welcome this paper, and happy to support it.
Any other councillors? Councillor Emas Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just really following on from what Martin just said as well. We can see in the paper, and it mentions it again, that the LGF is not going to replace the UK SPF, but what we need to make sure is we don't lose any of the links that were created through the UK SPF, because some of those have been with local groups and businesses. So it's just to make sure that we don't miss out on that changeover in September when that money goes. Thank you.
Diana, did you want to answer them questions?
Thank you. Just being led by the actual funding stream itself. So we have other funding like the investment zone funding that is kind of sector targeted, innovation targeted. So rather than looking at just this funding in its isolation, we are wanting to look at what is available in the area. What other funding have we got? What services have you got? How can this funding maximise what's available on the ground? So on business support, for example, there are a lot of national products available. Actually, the East Midlands doesn't get their fair share of those national products. So how do we put in together a system that maximises that as well as kind of pays for the gaps that are there across the piece? So MCA has a particular role. We've called it a system steward role for business support, where we need to convene people together to understand how the ecosystem is working and agree together where the gaps are, and then continuously all promote those together, moving to a much more cohesive ecosystem. So that just gives you an example on business support, but that's certainly the mechanism that we want to use across this funding. In terms of economic and activity that we've been talking about today as well, you know, localities, connections into the voluntary sector, for example, are really important for that kind of work. So we'll be wanting to utilise yourselves as local authorities to make those connections, but we see that there's a bigger system in there, and the more this money is really useful because it's not got a lot of terms and conditions with it. It's got a thematic focus, so it enables us to be a little bit more innovative with this funding going forward. Just in terms of kind of, you were saying around a replacement for SPF as well. So although this isn't a direct replacement, and the government's kind of framework particularly doesn't focus on things that are more community based that used to be in SPF, we are really cognizant that where we are delivering activity now, that we need to keep the skilled staff or connections in place, that we're really clear on either making extensions in the right places where they need to, or making sure we're convening people. So both in business support and on economic and activity, we are aware that there are projects and activity at play where kind of advisors or support workers might be being employed from SPF, and we would lose them if we have a break in delivery. That also doesn't make sense for businesses who are wanting to seek support to all of a sudden everything be gone and start from scratch 6 months later. So although it's not a direct replacement, where there are connections through, we're very aware of that and trying to work with localities to bridge that gap in the best way we can. Thank you.
Okay, other councillors want to speak? Councillor Reaney and then Councillor Matthews.
Yeah, actually, thank you, Diane. I think you've actually answered some of the questions I had. I wanted to ask how this tied in with all the other streams of investment money they have, because there's no point repeating things. And you know, I'm pleased that we've got this paper, and I do approve it. My slight concerns were that this amount of money spread over this new framework the government's passed down. You know, we're going to be not focused. It's going to be a sort of shotgun approach of small amounts of money that might not move the needle really. It doesn't replace the old shared prosperity fund, which I think was slightly more focused to my mind. And from what I understand, there was quite a lead in there towards the kind of visitor arts culture economy, and this is hardly referenced at all in these papers. So it would be a shame to lose those good staff that were promoting Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire as well. So I think you've answered quite a few of my questions, and the principles are all good, but I can't move from my mind the idea to perhaps focus this money in some way. You know, if we give little bits of money everywhere, and I can't see that it's going to move the needle. So that's my prime concern, really.
Councillor Matthews is up there.
Yeah, you know, we're very supportive of this approach, and we're, you know, very keen to work to identify new opportunities in Nottinghamshire and make sure that there's a strong fit with EMCA. This is the new administration's, you know, particular fit with business going forward. It will support us all to select the right investment in different types of places across EMCA. But we really would like to see, shall we say, a bit more of a business approach as the new administration works. So any views you've got on that are very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor James Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things when I speak to smaller businesses, and I echo sort of Councillor Rainey's thoughts about little bits everywhere, might not move the dial. One of the biggest issues, without getting into the politics of just listening to business owners, is minimum wages got to the point where employers are struggling to give people jobs. They want to give people jobs, they've got jobs to give, but can't actually afford it. To what extent do we think that EMCA could come up with some sort of programme that would support employers bringing people in? And I know we've sort of been down the road, whether it's through initiatives here or elsewhere, where we talk about apprenticeship schemes, etc. But I'm thinking something sort of different to that, maybe, that doesn't really start at the youngest stages. Don't get me wrong, we need to provide tons of support to the youngest stages, but I think there's probably lots of programs, should I say, already in place to do that. But sort of getting those smaller SME enterprises, that, you know, the ones that've got 1-2 employees, the cafes, etc., that want to grow but can't actually afford to grow. If they could do something like that in some sort of, I don't know, we'd do it, some sort of rebates or schemes or grants, etc., to employ new people, I think that'd be a great opportunity to really fuel some of those people. Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, D2N2, across the piece.
Okay, Diane, if you come back on them.
Yeah, great. Thank you for those questions again. Just to go back to your question about kind of the spread, Councillor Rini, I do agree. And one of the good things about Local Growth Fund is that we do have flexibility within the government's framework, granted, but to turn up and down areas as we want to. So there are probably 40 outputs and outcomes that have come as part of this. And if we do try and do something on every single one of them, then it will be watered down too much. So part of our approach is going to be trying to identify what are those areas that are either most in need or we have most opportunity return on investment, where we all agree that they should be the focus. So we're not looking to bring like 20 priorities through with the investment framework, a focus set of thematic areas with a core number of interventions behind them is kind of where we're wanting to work some of this. So I think that's a really good point. Councillor Matthews, in terms of a business approach, this really resonates because we were at the Business Advisor Board last week, presenting to about 20 businesses there, and they were really clear in their feedback to us. And it was around, how do we know if we're successful? What is the impact and how do we know? And we were talking about kind of ONS data that's annual and often 1 or 2 years behind. And they were really saying, this is not how a business would work. You would know way before that if something was successful or not. And so we are looking at how we can look at outputs as well as results as well as outcomes. So, for example, we might put a programme in place and on a monthly basis we would know how many businesses we've engaged. That's a good stat, but doesn't really mean anything. You know, on a quarterly basis we would understand if those businesses are receiving a grant or match funding, what kind of support. Then in the long term, the economic impact might be felt through the ONS. But having more timely data to make decisions in programme around kind of what the impacts of our programmes are was really something that came strongly through the Business Advisor Board as like that business-minded approach. So we're really listening to that going forward. The final thing I just wanted to add was around arts, visitor economy and culture. There is scope within this to look at our target sectors. So our local growth plan talks about high value sectors, of which the visitor economy is absolutely one of those. So we will be looking at how we can harness our high value sectors through the local growth fund, and that probably will require some co-investment from a research perspective and from diagnosing what's needed and then putting the interventions in place. And we're already having really good conversations with the technical officer group about doing that together rather than separately, to build a really good case for investment for those sectors. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Anybody else like to make any comments? Okay, probably just last one from me then is just to say, I know you said the deadline's 6th of March, which is literally like 2 weeks away, if that. I can only urge government to give us a bit more time, because sometimes you want to make sure you're thinking about where you're spending money.
Yeah.
If you're trying to put plans together at very short notice, then sometimes you can make mistakes, or we put proposals forward doesn't mean every case gets accepted. So will we put just the amount they're looking for, or will we oversubscribe, because we know that you don't always hit 100%?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm meeting government later today to make this point around the timescales. They have themselves talked about a co-creation process. So we want to show willing and show the benefit of the work that we've been doing on our local growth plan, for example. So we are in a position where we could quite quickly come to a set of themes for investment and identify from what they've given us the outputs and the outcomes and the theory of change for that. So that's kind of stage one, and I think we can do that quite well in a 2-week timescale. What I don't think we can do is identify which interventions we're funding and what targets we're going to hit without kind of making it up really in 2 weeks. So we will be asking for a longer period of time throughout March and April to do that more thorough work, so we can really make sure that we're investing in the right things. There should also be some flexibility within the programme duration, because it's 4 years, to make sure that what we're doing works, to test and evaluate and change. So we're not planning, and government aren't asking to at this point, nail down everything for the full 4 years. They want some clarity on year one around how the money's going to be spent, so they're assured that it is all spent and there's no kind of clawback for that. But they're willing to give us some flexibility going forward. So although we will put in a high level investment plan, we'll do more work of that over the period. So June is really where we're working to in terms of the board ratification, because that's what it needs from a governance perspective. We will hopefully at that point have a number of interventions that we can approve for year one to get the money out into the system straight away. But then we will be wanting to do more work on evaluating and evolving as this fund goes on.
Thank you, Dan, because I think early doors when we started as the investment committee, we wanted to learn lessons that have happened in the past and from the LEP and other places, that we don't just commit and say we're going to do this, and when it comes to the delivery we're saying sorry, not this year but next year. Because I think that being able to deliver, say we're going to deliver something and deliver it, is really important, because we do know in other places not all combined authorities are hitting the target, so there will be money available. And I think having that good record and that reputation nationally about EMCA being the place that delivers is really important. But okay, thank you. So there's 5 recommendations within the report, so a committee to happy to accept the 5 recommendations. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. If we move on then to item 7, which is the investment committee work programme. Tom, who's head of investment strategy and programmes, are you taking us through this draft programme?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is just a rolling and recurring item that we'll bring forward to the committee, really to give an idea as to what the draft work programme will be as we move through our meetings and our meeting cycles continuously. I think for me, more moving towards the second half of the report and not the main body of the text. We want to showcase what we're going to look to do, and in a similar way, what we want to do is we want to bring forward other areas of investment within the combined authority to come to this committee, so then this committee is fully cited with regards to what other interventions we're taking here. Also, so like Alex has come along today to give us an idea around transport investment, we aim to bring forward the Brownfield Housing Fund to the next meeting. We'll bring forward other background details and information with regards to other investments that we're making away from investment funds and the East Midlands Investment Zone programme, which sit under the terms of reference for this programme, for this committee, sorry. I think one of the things that we want to be doing and bringing forward, and we've agreed or would like to agree that every 6 months we'll bring forward an investment portfolio update, which will give an idea as to where the funds that we are committing and their latest status and progress update is. So we'll probably skip one meeting at a time and bring that back so then the committee can critique, make decisions on where projects sit, and we can bring forward risk and mitigation to the committee. And then there's just a couple of other pieces that I wanted to flag with regards to what we'll be bringing forward at the next committee or one after around the investment zone annual delivery plan. So this committee looks after the investment zone, and what we want to bring forward is the agreement of what we are going to utilise our funding for and the funding profiles for the next financial year at our next meeting. Alongside that, local growth fund will continue to be delivered and brought back to this committee for updating as we move forward. So really it's just a showcase of what we have on the coming meetings, and if there's anything that any committee members or other areas would like to see come forward, when we're open to changing that.
Okay, thanks for that, Tom. So I see the next two committee meetings have got quite a lot on the agenda, and then there's two blank ones. So if committee members have got any suggestions what they want to see coming forward, then please let us know today or raise them outside of this meeting. I know that we've had conversations, Tom, and it's really important that once we approve projects and stuff, we don't just forget about them. It's really important to find out, are they on track and where are they, and you know, is there other opportunities that then develop because of them proposals. But any committee members want to comment? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. If we, on the draft work programme there, you've got down at the top to note the progress of the Brownfield Housing Fund, and to note again on the other, should that not be scrutinised? So we're just nodding it through, aren't we, noting it? I think scrutinised, particularly on brownfield land, because I still think we're missing a trick there. We're digging fields up, and yet we've actually still got a significant amount of old industrial land around about. But note is, you know, I'm not quite sure that's the right word for it. That's my comments. Thank you.
Clark, it might say no, I'm sure we can scrutinise. I don't think anybody's going to stop us doing that. But Tom, any comments on that point?
Can change it to reflect that if we want to put that into the recommendations. Yeah. No, that's fine.
Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any hands up. So the recommendation is to approve the draft work programme attached to Appendix A and receive regular updates on progress. Happy to accept that? Yeah, thank you. We move on then to item 8, MCA's Investment Fund Pipeline Autumn 25 Funding Round. Dan, Tom, okay, over to you.
Yeah, so I'll pick this up. This is a two-parter. The first half of it is not exempt. The second half is exempt, where we'll be sort of moving into specifics around projects, and if there's any pieces that want to come out of that, if we can move into that closed session, that would be great. I'll just give a bit of an overall sort of view of where this Autumn 25 funding round sits, and the progress that's been made to date, just to refresh committee members. So as you'll have all remembered, we ran an outline call process for projects back in around August last year, moving into September, October, by the time it was reviewed and scrutinised. As part of that, it was a 25 million, all around there and about, offer of funding that we had available that we wanted to bring forward short-term strategic priorities for investment that we could look to invest in, and really get some projects on the ground and moving and spending some capital to deliver across the region. At the November MCA board meeting, we brought forward 10 projects with concept initiation documents which were accepted onto the MCA pipeline at that point in time. around about a figure of about £10.7 million worth of funding agreed at that point in time. They have now started to progress through the single assurance framework, which is our governing document which guides projects through that process. Of those 10, 8 of the projects have submitted final business cases to us and are going through our approvals process at this point in time, hopefully being signed off this week, some of them. That will force them to move into the contracting stage, and we should start to see that delivery and progress really taking place across the region fairly quickly. So a big spread of projects from across the area in the previous round, with projects coming forward in Chesterfield, Newark, Derbyshire Dales, Bolsover, North East Derbyshire and Erewash. Yeah, like I say, geographical spread in terms of where the investment was made previously. 2 more of those projects, because you'll have noted 8 of them are moving forward for final business case delivery. 2 of them are just being scrutinised for a couple of pieces of detail at the moment. There's nothing that we see potentially wrong with the projects. It's just clarifying at certain points around subsidy control and another couple of pieces with regards to where they sit. Today we're asking for approval to enter the pipeline for 7 projects that have submitted concept initiation documents to us, leaving 2 left to submit, and they are being worked through with the respective authorities at this point in time to bring forward their concept initiation documents for us to approve. So that's where we sit at this point in time with regards to what we want to approve and what's happened to date on the projects.
Okay, thank you, Tom. So just to remind everyone, this is the open session, so we're not going into the details. We'll cover that under item 10. But is there any other questions people want to make on this? No? I'd probably just say it's great to see that 10 projects went forward and 7 have been approved and 2 are going through the final project. So it just shows that good quality was put forward. So if committee is happy, there's one recommendation to recommend the approval and inclusion of the 7 projects with indicative investment value of 15 million set out in Appendix A of MCA's investment pipeline, subject to compliance with the MCA's Constitution and Single Assurance Framework. Are we happy to approve?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 9 is the exclusion of press and public. And I'd like to thank all those that have joined us online to join the committee. So are committee members happy to approve? Do I need to read the? No? Okay, thank you. Everyone happy to approve? Yep. Thank you very much.